Namaskar. Welcome to Ancient Wisdom. Yesterday we started with looking at Rudhi's customs or social habits. Today we'll be diving a little bit deeper into the subject. We'll be seeing 4 Rudhis or customs and look a little deeper into those. Anytime we have any educational program, the first thing we do is Prajwalan, in which there is an oil lamp, usually of brass, that is lighted by the chief guest and other people or other distinguished people who are in the program. Now, as we see yesterday also, that each Rudhi or custom may have a physical dimension, emotional dimension, symbolic dimension, mental dimension, or a social dimension. In this case, today, Prajwalan is considered to be worshipping light, meaning worshipping knowledge or worshipping our gurus, our traditions and culture. And as a result of which, every indoor program will start with Prajwalan. Earlier on, in earlier days, Prajwalan had a strong physical dimension, because before you start anything, in those days, you would light a lamp. Without lamp, there would not be light enough to pursue any educational pursuit, because indoors you would not be having that much of light to be able to read, write, or sometimes even see. So this was something that was physical exercise. Slowly, it got converted into symbolic exercise as of today. Because as of today, there are so many electrical lights and every inside area is already lighted even before the program with the electrical light. But we are keeping our tradition, our culture, and we'll do Prajwalan as the beginning of any educational program especially. Second that we see is, you will see Vastu Shastris or even Kadiyas insisting on every door having a umbartha, or what you call in English as threshold. This threshold at one time used to provide a very useful function. You see, when the door doesn't have a umbartha, there is always a small gap. Doesn't matter how well designed the door is, there is always a small gap between the floor and the door. And from that small gap, a serpent or insects or even rats or even snakes can come into the house. With umbartha being there, all of this is avoided. So a small piece of wood takes care of all the security needs of the family in a great way. That is why even before the door is made, they would see to it that the umbartha is made or the threshold is made. Today, especially in multi-story buildings, this may not be a necessary criteria, but still, I would say it is still useful, because many a times there is a small gap between the door and the floor, and that is why the umbartha is necessary on a physical dimension. At the same time, as of now, it is used on symbolic dimension as the point of entry of the house. Many of you might have seen the double aldrops that are there on the doors, especially in villages or small cities, small towns. You will see this kind of construction of the door. This is the kadi, and it has got 2 aldrops where the kadi can be fixed. That one aldrop is easily explained, because that is where you can put up the lock and lock the door. What is the purpose of the second aldrop? Or for simplicity purpose, we will call it kadi. What is the purpose of this second aldrop? And only those who do not know the history would laugh at this. The second one is to keep the door open. The first one is meant to keep the door closed. The second one is meant to keep the door open, and all the time it should be either one of them should be locked. When you put the lock on the first aldrop, the door is closed. When you put the lock on the second Aldrop, door cannot be closed. Now what is the need for this? Earlier on, the dacoits, which were quite common in Mofisul areas, in villages, what they would do is they would come by group, 8 or 10 of them, and they would pick up one house to rob. To make sure that other people cannot help the people in that particular house that they are robbing, first they would go all around, locking the doors or locking the kadi of each door. And then, in the next half an hour, they would rob the family and run away. There was no way the other people could come to their help because their doors themselves were locked. Now, with the second Aldrop, this is avoided because you are locking the door on the second Aldrop. That means the door cannot be locked from outside, it can only be locked from inside. So, if the robbers come, they would not be able to lock the doors of other places. That means the security of the whole village is increased and the robbers will not take this risk of robbing one place when other people can come to your help. Today, maybe with the additional securities and so on, this may not be necessary, but today it serves a purpose so that the lock is not misplaced. Lock is not kept under some pillow, lock is not kept under some inside some cupboard or anything, and that is, you keep the lock on the door. When you are going out, take it out and lock it, otherwise let it remain on the door. But largely it has become a symbolic gesture and maybe not necessary today. So you will see that in many multi-story buildings now you don't have a second Aldrop. So there is only one kadi and there is no second Aldrop. So we have now seen three different Rudhis or customs or social habits. Now we'll come to something somewhat more drastic. In North India, in some communities, there exists a practice that after a child is born, on its first anniversary, it is taken to the nearby river and they hire two boats. These two boats go in different directions and then they start approaching each other. In one of the boats, the father of the child, the small child, 1-year-old child, sits with the child and he drops the child into water and the child is immediately picked up by a person who is sitting in the other boat. The purpose of this is not known. This is a ritual. I didn't know this purpose and I kept on searching what could have been the purpose because there is a huge risk involved, isn't it? And then I happened to read the autobiography of one big actor whom you know, Sidney Poitier, the famous actor from Bahamas and then US, and he has featured in films like To Sir With Love or even Speed. So this is Sidney Poitier, and he says in Bahamas there is a practice that when the child is about 1 year old, they go out in a boat and the child is dropped in water. If the child starts to drown, it is picked up, it is cajoled, it is made to relax, but then again it is put in water. This process is repeated till the child begins to love water and starts to swim on its own. Why is done? This is done because many islands in Bahamas or even in that area are even smaller than 5 kilometer diameter. So there is every chance for a child when it starts to walk or even crawl, it is very, very possible that it would be on a sea beach and it would walk into the water. And that is why the child has to learn swimming before it can learn walking. And the ritual that I told you in India is a representation of this ritual, making sure that the child can swim before it can walk. And it used to serve a very, very, very important purpose, a life-saving purpose in those days. Maybe it may not be applicable today. At the same time, many people do not know that swimming is very natural to human beings. We are the second best swimmers in the world, just after the fish. And we are the best swimmers. Even our backs and our wings are marked with hair in such a way that our body has got a best shape to be able to swim. And swimming comes naturally to us. We don't have to learn swimming. Even scientifically speaking, our body is lighter than water. And that is why even if we remain in water without moving, we cannot drown. One part of our body would always remain above the water. You have to only make sure that that one part that remains above water is your nose and not your foot. But this is a misconception that we have to learn swimming. We learn swimming in terms of going forward, but as far as floating is concerned, that is completely natural. I'll tell you one interesting episode in this case. Some 1 or 2 years ago, there were huge floods in Kerala, and many people died. Many people had to be rescued. Interestingly, the stories that the rescue workers told are astonishing. Kerala is a land of 55 rivers. That means doesn't matter where you are in Kerala, within 3 to 4 kilometers there is going to be a river. So flooding, water coming into your house, water reaching chest height are common things in Kerala or any of these, as it is in any coastal areas. But with the advent of urbanization, the Keralites or majority of the Keralites have forgotten swimming. Earlier on, swimming used to be a part of their natural diet, so to say. Everybody would swim. Just like in Konkan area of Maharashtra, everybody has to be able to swim. But in this case, many people had forgotten swimming because they never needed to. And that was caused a huge havoc and great load on the rescue workers, because people were not even able to come out from waist deep water, forget about chest deep water, and there was a huge load on the service facility. This is what shows the importance of a custom. If you are near water, you better be a swimmer. We'll come to the last one, and this is a bit funny one. I had gone to a hospital and was advised to take an particular injection for the person who came to give this injection. He filled up the syringe, and then he pressed it. That is done so that there are no air bubbles remaining in the injection. And then he did 2 stabbing motions towards the wall. I was surprised. I asked him what were those stabbing motions meant to do. He said, when you do that, there is no air bubble remaining in the injection. If air bubble remains in the injection, it can be life-threatening, so you have to make sure that no air bubble remains. But then I asked him that it was already done when you press the plunger. When you press the plunger, the air bubbles go out. He said, no, even then there will be a small air bubble, and that small air bubble will go out only when you make these stabbing motions. I was still not convinced. So I went to the senior doctor and asked him, what are those stabbing movements for? He shrugged his shoulders and told me, see, all the people here have been trained by me. And I got my training in the war time. I was the smallest doctor, 5 feet 2 inches, and due to war, the aprons were in short supply. So we always used to get XL aprons with full sleeves, and there was no option. As a result of which, the apron hands or apron sleeves would always overtake my hands, and whenever I used to go for giving injection, which used to be a lot many times during the day, I had to make those motions to get the sleeve back on my forearm and then give the injection. The long habit has become second nature. It has remained with me. I don't explain it as such when I am training, but do it just by nature of habit. People observe what they see rather than hear what I talk, and they keep on observing me and they start following me. And as a result of which, this is the explanation that has been generated out of their own logic. the explanation, real explanation is this, that the aprons used to be longer, my hands were shorter. So this is also the way it can happen. Before we think of any Rudhi, custom or social habit, what care needs to be taken is, rather than denouncing it, go to its roots, observe it properly, find out why it started, find out its relevance to today, and then only think about discarding it or modifying it. Just telling somebody else that I am not going to follow because I don't understand this, you are shirking your responsibility. If you want to continue the culture, if you want to continue the tradition, you need to go to the roots of it. Who knows, it could be doing something very valuable service for you. Thank you.